Hey everyone, what's up? I'm King Power 44 and today we're going to be talking about some hot fixes and balance changes coming to World of Warcraft Legion. There are a lot. I just skimmed through it really quickly, but we're going to pretty much go over everything, both the PvE and PvP hot fixes to each class and a couple of other things. So we're just going to get right into it because there is a ton of stuff to go over. So we're looking here at the first hotfix, and it's just the achievement for the Broken Owls Pathfinder rank 1. Now properly displays the amount of mounted speed increased. This is just going over that they've collected a ton of data, and they're looking to see how all the classes work in the new Mythic Dungeons and the first week of raiding. So this stuff should be coming out around the next realm maintenance, but this was published on the 23rd, so the next realm maintenance should be today, the 27th, for US, and I think EU is tomorrow, the 28th. So we're starting with Death Knights. For Frost, Remorseless Winter's damage was increased by 50%, Obliterates damage increased by 19%, Frost Strike's damage increased by 12%, Howling Blast damage increased by 10%, Frostlight's talents damage increased by 13%, Frozen Pulse talents damage increased by 11%, and Breath of Sindragosa's talent damage increased by 17%. So you can see that Death Knights got a really big buff to their Frost spec, which was kind of needed because they did feel a little bit underpowered compared to the other specs for Death Knight. Now we're moving on to Demon Hunter. For Havoc, their Throw Glaive damage was reduced by 30%. Their Fell Mastery talents damage bonus to Fell Rush reduced by 30%. Bloodlet talents damage now deals 100% of the initial Throw Glaive damage. Fury of the Illidari's artifact abilities damage was reduced by 20%. And here we have a note saying that see below for additional PvP tuning adjustments to the Fury of the Illidari. We're going to go over that when we get into the PvP stuff. The O Balance Blades artifact trait damage bonus to Blade Dance was also reduced to 3% per target. And then for the Vengeance spec, Mastery now provides 50% less damage reduction per point. So that's going to be really big. I guess maybe they needed the nerf to that because they were just too survivable. I don't know. I guess that for some reason Mastery was giving way too much damage reduction per point. And then their Demon Spike's damage reduction was increased to 20%. Okay, so that's why they probably moved the damage reduction to other ability. Here in the note it says gearing heavily for Mastery was allowing Vengeance Demon Hunters to reach excessively high levels of physical damage reductions. Yep, that's what we were saying. Where we're reducing the top end potential of this effect somewhat and bringing up the baseline. This should also cause the value of Mastery to be more in line with other stats. Okay. Now for Druid, their Moonfire non-feral damage increased by 10%. For Balance, we're looking at Sunfire's damage increased by 10%, Starfall's damage increased by 10%, Lunar Strike damage increased by 5%, and Solar Wrath's damage increased by 5%. So a nice little buff to Balance there. We're moving on to the Mages now. We've got Arcane, where Mastery effects increased by 20%. That's nice. Arcane Missiles damage increased by 9%. Arcane Blast damage increased by 10%. So a nice little buff there to Arcane. And we have Frost here, where Frostbolt's damage increased by 8%. Ice Lance's damage increased by 13%. Flurry damage increased by 38%. Blizzard damage increased by 36%. And the mana cost reduced by 50%. Splitting Ice talents now cause 80% of normal damage, up from 50%. Ice Nova's damage was increased by 13%. Rare Frost damage was increased by 28%, and Glacial Spike's damage increased by 15%. So a nice buff right there to the Frost spec for Mages. Now for Hunters, they didn't change too much, but Barrage, non-survival, damage reduced by 20%. That's going to be kind of big to Marksman because Barrage was a regular in their rotation, but we'll see how that works out. Beast Mastery Bestial Wrath's damage bonus was increased to 25%, And for survival, flanking strikes damage increased by 62%. So we got some nice buffs to the 2 specs, Beast Mastery and Survival for the Hunters. And Barrage's damage was just reduced by 20%. So we'll see if that affects Marksman in any big way. Then for Monks, we only have the Mistweaver's Spinning Crane Kick. Its damage was reduced by 25%. Okay, that's nice. Paladins, Retribution. We have the Templar's Verdict damage increased by 10%. Divine Storm's damage increased by 20%. Crusader's Strike damage increased by 13%. Blade of Justice's damage increased by 13%. Judgment damage increased by 13%. Zeal's damage increased by 13%. And Blade of Wrath's damage increased by 13%. So I think basically what they're doing is just evening out the classes, because there were some specs I feel that were just way too underpowered, and I think they felt the same way. So that's what they're doing right now. So for Priest, Holy Nova's damage was reduced by 16%, and for Shadow, we have Mindseer's damage and Insanity Generation increased by 50%, and Void Form stacks no longer increase while Dispersion and Void Turn are active. So here in this note it says that these abilities prevent Insanity Drain from increasing while active, which effectively reduces the Insanity Drain for the entire remainder, the current Void Form. This was proving to be too powerful, so we're now making sure that the damage bonus and Insanity Drain from Void Form remains in sync. The benefit of Mass Hysteria is now capped at 100%, and here in the note it says that we want it to be rewarding when you're able to maintain Surrender to Madness for an extremely long time, but the amount of damage this trait was contributing in those circumstances was excessive. So for Rogues, we have Death from Above. The area damage was increased by 100%. For Assassination Rogues, Deadly Poison damage was increased by 30%. Fan of Knives damage increased by 30%. Bag of Tricks duration reduced to 3 seconds. The overall damage of it was unchanged, and the radius to 6 yards from 3 yards. And now it now benefits from Mastery too. Okay, so the next thing is Poison Knives no longer benefit Twitch from Mastery. Damage per point increased to 4%, so that's a nice little damage boost there. For Outlaw, we have Fatebringer's energy cost reduction reduced to 3 per rank. Okay, and then we have Fate's Thirst damage bonus to run through reduced to 6% per rank, and Black Powder's damage bonus to Between the Eye reduced to 6% per rank. And then for Subtlety, we just have some increases to damage in Eviscerate, Nightblade. Those are both 15%, and Shuriken Storm's damage increased by 30%. We're going to talk more about Nightblade in the PvP section. You'll see there. Second Shuriken chance to activate increased to 30%. It was previously 10%, and the damage was increased by 30%, and now deals 200% additional damage while Stealth or Shadow Dance is active. Moving on to the Shamans, we have the Mastery effects increased by 12.5%. So Mastery is looking a little bit better for the Elemental Shamans. Chain Lightning, Maelstrom generation increased to 6. Lightning Bolt damage increased by 23%. Chain Lightning's damage increased by 23%. Lava Burst damage increased by 5%. And Storm Elemental Call, Lightning, and Wind Gust damage has been increased to 20%. And with Enhancement, they fixed a bug that gave offhand special attacks a 100% chance to activate Wind Fury while Doom Winds was active, and Wind Fury's activation chance has been increased to 20%. Here in this note, it says that they're fixing a bug that added multiple extra Wind Fury procs to each activation of Doom Winds, but adding some Wind Fury procs back by increasing the baseline activation chance. This should also improve Maelstrom generations outside of Doom Winds. And for Restoration, their Chain Lightning damage was increased by 23%. For Warlocks here, you can see we have a ton of buffs to Warlocks. In Affliction, we have Drain Life, Drain Soul, and Corruption's damage being increased by 10%. Agony's damage increased by 5%. Unstable Affliction and Seed of Corruption's damage increased by 15%. Siphon Life and Haunt Siphon Light's damage increased by 10%, Haunt's damage increased by 15%, and Phantom Singularity damage increased by 15%. That's all for Affliction. For Demonology, we have the Hand of Gul'dan impact damage increased by 20%, Demon Wrath's damage increased by 15%, Shadow Bolt's damage increased by 10%, Doom's damage increased by 10%, Wild Imp's damage increased by 10%, Dreadstalker's attack power increased by 10%, and the Felguard's attack power also increased by 10%. The Doom Guard's Doom Bolt damage is increased by 18%, Demon Bolt damage increased by 10%, Implosion's damage increased by 15%, Shadow Flame's damage increased by 10%, and Dark Glare's damage increased by 10%. And then for Destruction, we have the Chaos Bolt, Incinerate, Immolate, Conflagrate, and Rain of Fire, Cataclysm, and Channel Demon Fires. All damage increased by 11%, and the Rain of Fire's cast time was removed. So a huge buff to every single class of Warlock. That's nice to see. They're having someone who plays Warlock that I know said that this was really necessary, that a lot of the different classes felt underpowered, and I saw that in some of the mythic dungeons, how little DPS some of them were doing. So for Warriors, Arms exploit weakness bonus reduced to 3% per point, and focused rage damage bonus reduced to 30%. So Arms got a little nerf there, while Fury's Rampage and Bloodthirst damage was increased by 12%. The Raging Blow and Furious Slash damage increased by 5%, as well as Execute's damage increased by 5%. And for protection, we see that the Vengeance Rage cost reduction reduced to 35%, Intercept's Rage Generation reduced to 10%, and Shield Slam's Rage Generation reduced to 10%. So another small nerf to protection there. Warriors were pretty powerful in the beginning of Legion, so I think that ought to balance them out a little bit, and Fury's looking to do a little bit more damage than what they were doing. So now we're moving on to the PvP stuff. You guys can either stop here if you're not interested, but basically developers were saying that many of the above changes are beneficial for PvP. Some specs needed additional tuning for PvP situations, and some of the PvP specific changes they were making are intended to counteract the above changes, while others are simply intended to help overall PvP balance. So you will see that in Battlegrounds, tank specialized characters no longer take additional damage while carrying a flag. And then we can see that they made some changes to the Blood Death Knight class. Consumption's healing is no longer reduced in PvP, and Death Strike now factors in 50% of recent damage taken from players when determining its healing amount. It previously ignored damage taken from players. Then they made some changes to Havoc and Vengeance Demon Hunters, where with Havoc we have the Fury of the Illidari artifact abilities damage reduced by 10% in PvP, and that's up from a 30% reduction in PvP. And Vengeance's Soul Cleaves heal no longer reduced in PvP. So that should help out the Vengeance Demon Hunters a little bit more with their survivability and their self-healing. For Druids, we see Life Bloom's effect increased by 50% in PvP, their critical strike stat reduced by 50%, and their haste stat increased by 50%. So some real balance changes to Restoration Druids in PvP. For Guardian, their Frenzy Regeneration now factors in 50% of recent damage taken from players while determining its healing amount, where previously, again, it ignored damage taken from players. For Hunters, we see the Survival Mongoose's Fury now increases the damage of Mongoose Bite by 35% per stack in PvP, where it was previously 10% lower at 25% per stack. And for Beast Mastery, the Agility stat was reduced by 10%, so a little bit of a nerf there for Beast Mastery in PvP. For mages, we have Frostbolt now reduces movement speed by 50%, and Frostbolt's damage is now increased by 10% in PvP instead of 20% in PvP. And then in Fire, we have World in Flames, the Honor Talent reduction to Flame Strike's cast time reduced to 2 seconds. For monks, we have their Mistweaver's counter magic talent. Bonuses to renewing mist reduced to 150%. And then for Windwalker, we have Strike of the Windlord's artifact abilities damage is now reduced by 30% in PvP, which is up from a 50% reduction. And their agility stat increased by 12%. Moving on to Paladins here. Their Retribution, the strength stat was just reduced by 5%, so a little bit of a nerf there. Not too big. And for protection, Light of the Protector and Hand of the Protector's healing is now reduced by 15% in PvP, which is up from a 50% reduction. For Priest, we have Discipline. Their Atonement healing is now increased by 15% in PvP, which is down from 25%. And for Holy, Apotheosis can no longer be dispelled. Interesting. And then for Rogues, we have the Outlaw. Honor talent control is King duration reduced to 3 seconds, not 30, 3 seconds. Between the Eyes, damage, bonus, and critical strike reduced to 100% in PvP, down from 200%. And Subtleties, Eviscerate now deals 15% less damage, as well as their Nightblade deals 15% less damage in PvP. Looking at Warriors here, and I think this is the last class change for PvP. Here we have Arms, where Echo Slams damage reduced to 5% from the target's total health. For Fury's Bloodthirst heal is no longer reduced in PvP, and for protection, Ignore Pain's maximum absorb amount is no longer reduced in PvP, but note that the effect of each Ignore Pain is still reduced by 20% in PvP. Now some changes to the honor system. The honor system reward Glory of the Melee now rewards 500 artifact power, and it was previously 150 artifact power. While for World PvP, Warden Tower World Quest now grant 150 honor instead of 300 honor, and Warden Tower World Quest now appear 3 times per day, and each quest is available for 24 hours. So there's a ton of World PvP you guys can go do. For the class halls, Druids with the Evergreen perk should no longer have their planted soils reset after entering an arena match, and the Soul Reaper's tooltip for the Shadow Hersey talent is no longer incorrect. Then for some dungeon and raiding fixes, in the Emerald Nightmare, they fixed the bug where players would fall to their death when jumping into the Rift of Alun. While mounted, Warlocks will now be able to target their Soul Figgies when fighting Ilgnoth inside the Hearth Chamber. That's that like mass with the eyeball boss. And Ursoc no longer causes players to stand up and interrupt their eating, drinking when he respawns. Now for the Archway dungeon, enemy forces will remain in the Archway after players have defeated Advisor Vandros, and Tome of Hex Spider should now only drop for Shaman when defeating Naltira. And then for Maw of Souls, players should no longer become stuck inside the cages they were placed in after defeating Yimron. That's funny. And items changes, so damage from Potion of the Old War and Potion of Deadly Grace is reduced by 33%. Previously, we significantly buffed the damage of these potions, but then discovered some bugs that were significantly reducing their effective damage. Now that those bugs have been fixed, their damage contribution is much too high, and they should still feel very rewarding to use, but we're bringing them back down to earth just a little. I do agree with that. Damage of from Potion of the Old War was ridiculous, since basically you get 2 copies of yourself doing damage. It was a lot of damage. And then they fixed a bug that was causing balance druids to sometimes engage enemies from unintended great distances and damage trinket procs. The Grove Darkener's Treads should now switch from intellect to agility based on your spec. That's good. And for professions, it should now be possible to reach skill 800 in blacksmithing, since previously I guess it was impossible. And for cooking, rank 1 of Hearty Feast should now reward 1 feast instead of 5. Subsequent ranks reward a cost reduction rather than additional food. Demon Hunter should now get appropriate stats from Feast and other similar source of buff. So apparently they didn't. And then last but not least, we have the quest where in the Withered Army training scenario, it should be a lot less likely for Laystalker Dro to be hiding somewhere that he wouldn't normally be encountered by clearing the room. And the new archaeology quest aura is now displayed while you're on your archaeology quest in your current zone. Developer's note here is that this is to make sure you are aware of how many days you have left to complete a large archaeology project before it expires. We're investigating ways to provide this in the quest tracker and quest log as well. An Adode Wither Petal will no longer become stuck during danger. Adode Wither Petal, the quest there. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for the whole patch note. This video was super long, around 22 minutes. Sorry about that. We might cut it into PvP and PvE, I don't know, or maybe I just released the full thing. It's just a really long video. Remember to subscribe if you guys haven't yet, like the video, and in the comments down below let me know what you think of these balances and hotfixes that they made to the game and whether or not you like them or dislike them. I'm King Power 44 and I'm out of here. Oh, and by the way, you guys can check out our schedule in the About tab. If you press read more, it'll drop down and you will see the schedule. And just to tell you guys right now, we're going to be uploading Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. No uploads on Mondays and Thursdays. So just make sure you guys are aware of that. Alright, I'm King Power 44 and I'm out of here. Peace.